Hi friends, welcome to the 19th episode of The Potter's Wheel. Today we're in Luke chapter 14. Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem, which is documented in chapters 9 through 19, and he's dealing with multiple themes related to discipleship. In this particular circumstance, he's at a meal at the house of a prominent Pharisee. The word prominent there literally means a ruling Pharisee, and this Pharisee probably was part of the Jewish council called the Sanhedrin. So a very important gathering. And it's very unusual in this type of a meal that was performed on the Sabbath that there would be any sense of intrigue or second guessing or hidden agendas. Yet, Jesus is challenging this group of religious leaders that are gathered together on several motivational issues related to their life and their ministries. So I'm going to read chapter 14, verses 1 through 4, and then I'll make reference to the following passages. I won't read all of it. So one Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. So there's the intrigue. There in front of him was a man suffering from dropsy. Dropsy was the gathering of body fluids in your lower extremities, and it was viewed as being something of a judgment from God for sin. And so people with that weren't really, considered very spiritual people. Yet he was at this meal. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. So very, very strong rebuke there that they couldn't come back with any type of response. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him away. Then he asked of them, this is verse 5, "If one of you has a son or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull him out?" And they had nothing to say. So he goes on and challenges them with several other issues. One, verse 7, he noticed the guests were picking the places of honor, so he challenged the idea of looking for the place of honor. And then later on in verse 12, he looks at the host and he says, when you give luncheons or dinners, instead of just inviting your brothers and relatives and rich neighbors who can repay you, he challenges them to invite marginalized people, lame, blind, poor, people that cannot repay him. So this passage answers, for me, several questions. One of them is, what if a lot of religious people are present when we're ministering that are against healing? What should we do? Because these guys were clearly against Jesus healing on a Sabbath. And so what do? Well, we just listen to the Holy Spirit and do what he says anyway. So we can't let our environment, our circumstances intimidate us and cause us to shrink back from obeying the voice of the Lord. That's the message that I get in that particular passage. The other thing, will God heal people even if they might be the ones to blame for their condition? So people were blaming others with dropsy at that period of time, considering this was a curse from God. And sometimes we blame ourselves for illnesses, like maybe we were driving a car and we weren't driving safely and we got an accident, we're injured, and we don't want to pray to God to ask for healing. Well, God is so merciful, he'll heal anything. A great example of that is when Peter cut off the high priest's servant Malchus when Jesus was being arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, and Peter pulls out a sword, cuts his ear off. Jesus picks up the ear and reattaches it. So even though Peter caused the deformity now of the man losing his ear, Jesus still healed the ear and reattached it. And so Jesus goes on to teach several key lessons, I think, for all of us. One of them is that because they didn't want healing to occur on a Sabbath, he challenged that idea religiously of saying, look, if your son or an ox falls into a well, you're going to pull him out. So then he heals the guy. Well, sometimes we want to box God into healing during our time frame. I've been given what's called a run sheet, which describes how a service is supposed to be conducted, that says Lee will pray for the sick, and it'll give the exact minute and seconds that I'm praying for the sick, and then the time that I'm supposed to be done doing that. And my first response as I'm thinking and looking at these kinds of things is like, well, Holy Spirit, I hope you're on target today, because you have a very narrow time frame in which to heal people. Now, I understand the bigger the church, the more organized you have to be. But we have to think through, how are we going to expand the possibilities of the Lord moving in our gatherings, even though we might have a very large crowd. So we need to plan ahead of time for that. So boxing in God, we need to be careful not to box God in on our schedule for healing, because frankly, he rarely does it. Secondly, spiritual pride. That we need to be careful of spiritual pride, that we want the place of honor. So he's challenging religious leaders about stuff that we deal with, especially when we're in leadership. And finally, the importance of seeking out the poor and the marginalized who cannot repay us. I think there's a powerful, powerful message there, that we should constantly be looking out, who can we bless, who can we touch, who can we minister to that can never pay us back? And then we trust the Lord ultimately to pay us back for that. And not necessarily in this life, but in the life to come. Well, God bless you. I hope you've enjoyed this 19th episode of The Potter's Wheel. Look forward to seeing you next month.